Hey everyone, if you're out there listening, thank you for listening. Welcome back to the Monkey Business Podcast, the only
Wait,
podcast
what?
where what?
If you're out there, okay, never mind. Continue.
Thanks for joining us, guys. We know there's only a few of you, but we appreciate it. We love it. Welcome back to the only podcast where two idiots gang up on Warren and shame him for his opinions. I am Carter, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by the aforementioned Warren. How's it going?
It's going well right now. We'll see if that stays.
We'll see if that stays. And I'm also joined by Will. How's it
Idiot
going, Will?
number two. Pretty good. How about you, man?
I'm doing good, man. Good to be back here.
Truth.
So, if you happen to listen to our last podcast and listened all the way through, uh, we were a bit misleading. We are not going to be covering In Bruges. We are only going to be covering one movie today, and that is Martin McDonagh's latest masterpiece, The Banshees of Inisherin. And just gonna just gonna jump into it. You guys good with that? Go with recap.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So Colin Farrell plays Park, I think is the name, right? Park, kind of like that. It's Irish. It's not spelled the way you would think it would be because it's Irish. And Brendan Gleeson plays Colm. And these are two friends that, for as long as they can remember, have always met at the pub around 2 o'clock every day and drank and talked and shared life together. And now Brendan Gleeson has kind of given Colin Farrell the cold shoulder and decided that he's doesn't really want to do that anymore, doesn't really want to be friends anymore. This is extremely perplexing to Colin Farrell, who is just not sure what to make of it, not sure how to react to that information. And that's your setup. Calamity ensues.
I would agree with the last part.
All right. I think we have a very different definition of calamity though. So let's go with our podcast and let's see what calamity ensues here. Um to start off, I gonna give what is uh, undoubtedly true in my opinion, but for some reason a controversial statement. Just to go down the list: Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, and Barry Keoghan give four of the best performances of the year. Just undoubtedly, in my opinion, they all knock it out of the park. They are incredible with just absorbing themselves into their characters and giving themselves to their environment and really just becoming these people and leading us along this journey. Uh, any differing thoughts? Any agreements?
Condon and Keegan were pretty good.
All right.
I'll give you that.
All right.
I haven't seen enough to call them the best performances of the year, but
I mean, of what you've seen. Just go
oh,
from
in,
that.
in what I've seen, this is the best movie I've seen of the year. Best movie that I've seen come out this year. Critically, entertainment, production design, pacing, storytelling, um, filmography, like you name it. Screenplay, it is an incredible piece of film. Not many pictures, in my opinion, come out like this, where there is characters who have to act normal. You get a lot of stories where a character has to act like the main character of a plot, where everything revolves around them in order to achieve some type of a goal. But in this film, each actor has to play a very normal person with a few oddities to them, but really there's nothing crazy about them. They have
Did we
incredible.
watch the same movie?
We did, Warren. And it's hard to act as a normal person. It's not hard to act in some superhero-esque way, in my opinion, to act as like the spy or the honeypot or whatever you want to call them. Like, it's not as hard as everything else, but to act normally is
What?
crazy. I'm serious, man.
Okay, well, I agree that nobody's like a superhero or supervillain, but nobody's normal in the movie. What?
Go. Oh, okay. So
I don't think
contest me.
maybe normal isn't the right word, but it's just showing
Yeah, maybe I'm just
how
misunderstanding
people
what you're
live their
saying.
lives. It's just showing the culture of this island off of
If you
Ireland.
told me that this happened in some crazy island off the coast of Ireland, I would not be
It's like,
surprised. I'd be like, all
yeah,
right, sure. Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe it.
cool. A tiny town, someone went a little crazy.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Done. It is not that far to stretch the
It could have said based
imagination.
on a true story at the beginning of the movie, and you'd
And it
been
would have
like,
been
yeah,
amazing. I would have gone to this town to see if that had happened. I would have gone to Inisherin to
looking
try
for
and find this story.
That's like saying watching a series of unfortunate events. It's like, oh, it's just a tale about everyday life.
Completely different. Completely
Actually, very
different.
similar.
I have family stories that are worse than this story. Like that is like that's my realm for normal. It's like, no, we had like backwoods Kentucky stuff happen, dude. This is just Tuesday. Like, nah, these characters are normal schmormal.
It's
Absolutely okie
it's
dokie.
not the events, it's the characters themselves. But
So
we'll get
what
into
makes
that.
it okay?
we'll get
Well,
into
no,
that.
yeah, okay, all right. I'll shut up for now. But I think
No
these
need to shut up.
performances are phenomenal,
Hmm.
incredibly believable, absolutely well performed, well paced. They have incredible chemistry together as well. Did I say believability yet?
Yeah,
Because
we
I'm going to
said
say it again anyway.
they're just
Believability squared.
yeah, and they're absolutely hilarious, and they're super super heartfelt too. On top of that, and it
The deliveries are all there. The facial expressions are all there.
yep.
Um, every interaction between each other is well thought out, and a lot of the film I don't think is supposed to be that funny. It just, I'm gonna make the comparison to Fargo. It's just the way they talk that has this humor behind it. But it's when I went to Alaska. That's just how some people talk, man. It's a tiny town. There's not a lot going on, and everyone's a little nosy. And the biggest thing that happened in Alaska was the McDonald's opened up, which for Warren would also be big news.
Very
But
true.
but like here it's like that's no news. I'd beat his son if he came in here. No news. It's like, oh, just fell up and did it. It's the warm weather and it's raining outside. Oh, fantastic characters. And the animals just enhance the film.
Yep.
Jenny is the greatest animal on screen that I've seen in recent times.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Fargo because I think that is a good point. This feels very much like a Coen Brothers movie. Would you guys agree with
I've
that?
said that since the beginning
I
that this
would
is just
agree. Yep.
Fargo in Ireland. And
I think
Carter,
yeah.
who did you say did
The
thing for this
score for
movie?
the movie
Yeah, the score for
is
the movie.
Carter Burwell, who is the Coen Brothers composer. He always collaborates with them long time, and so if he of course wrote the Fargo theme as well.
But I think that would be a pretty big explanation as to why you guys liked it and I didn't.
I
You
don't
just
think that's a big explanation. I think that's like, yeah, it's the same composer. It has the same feel.
no, not the composer. The
Okay,
feeling like a
okay.
Coen Brothers movie because you guys very much appreciate
Fair.
their sense of humor and I do not.
Okay. Well,
I
you've
don't even
seen
think it's a sense of humor
half of a
though.
movie from them,
Yeah,
right?
it's more than a sense of humor, but yeah.
You've seen point five Coen Brothers movies,
No, he
correct?
watched Hail Caesar, right?
No.
Oh,
I've
Warren,
seen enough.
you're so uneducated.
Yeah. But yeah, Martin McDonagh seems to be kind of like the Irish Coen brothers, a little less mature up until this point, I think. But
He peaked. It's all downhill from
he,
here.
I, I don't want to say that, but he's
I hope we
peaked.
can't say that.
Yep,
When this film is nominated for all the Oscars,
yep.
just gonna sit back and relish it.
I will say this is going to be an interesting podcast because I'm basically like my goal is just to figure out why you guys liked it.
Okay.
That's my
I
goal.
can keep
Well,
me and my mom
we've
talked
got
for 45 minutes with Carter after the film, and then me and my mom got in the car and talked for another 45 minutes on the way home about why this film is so good. So,
Well, that's fine. I'm here to find out.
Carter,
Consider me curious.
Uh,
Curious
I will.
George.
All right, we'll
all right.
have you convinced by the end.
We can
We won't,
try.
but we'll try. Warren, was there anything about the movie that you did like? Anything that you thought was done well, or anything you would have changed? Because if you say you have the least to say, I would like to bounce off of you quite a bit.
All right, well, I'll just throw one thing out there. I will say the title, A plus. It's hard to come up
Right.
with a better title than this. It's so oddly specific that nothing's ever going to have the same name. But yeah, the title is very good.
Yeah. We've been talking about titles a lot and how most suck. And that I don't want to say
Pain.
most, but yeah, like, the trailer for, the new Gerard Butler movie is showing, and then at the end, Plane appears on the screen. And it's like, come on, guys. You really, that's the best you can do?
Ambulance.
Yeah, which
Ambulance, sir.
there it is. Yep, waiting for that. But yeah, great title.
He likes the double SH.
Plenty of double SH on
That
this
is pretty good
island.
as well. Yep.
Any characters that you really liked, Warren? Did you like the set designs at all, or like the filming locations, how it was shot?
Well, obviously, I like the film location because,
Yeah.
it's Ireland.
Ireland.
Who doesn't like Ireland?
It was gorgeous, wasn't it? Any characters though, or am I? No.
Well, really liked is a strong term, but I did really like Barry Keoghan.
Mhm.
He was pretty good. I forget what his character's name was. Dominic.
Dominic,
yeah.
yep. What about Siobhan? Any?
Is that the sister?
Yeah, the sister.
Yeah, she was a
Condon.
good character.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess might as well go ahead and say this now. I
Kinda
think those were the only two characters I liked.
You didn't
Or
like the bartender?
Dominic and the sister.
You
two
didn't like the bartender?
bartenders, the
Eh.
priest.
You didn't like the mail lady? The store owner? You didn't like
No?
Declan? The guy, if it's the same bread cart that hit me mother, I'm gonna kill him. You tell me you didn't
That's
like
impossible. That's how me mom died.
you tell me you didn't like who else is there? The Banshee herself.
The ghoul, that
The
old ghoul.
ghoul.
I call her a
was
ghoul
she
too,
actually
because she is a ghoul.
Was that old lady supposed to be a banshee, or is that just like
Yeah.
I don't think she's supposed to actually be a banshee.
I think
Not
she
in a literal sense, but
she
in
metaphorically fits the title.
yeah, it's kind of like, there she is. There's the banshee. She's gonna
it's just
sit
kind of an
back
imagery
amused as
type
people
thing?
die.
Mhm. And she's also always carrying on the hook that Dominic starts out with.
Look at this.
After his death.
Stick with the hook.
What do you think they use it for? Hooking things
Look
at
at
stick
something
length.
sticks length away.
What about the writing, Warren, didn't you like?
So I think the best way to explain it is as far as I like some of the like throwaway lines. I think those were some of the best parts of the movie. So like you're talking about the bread cart. That was pretty great. And at one point, somebody described Brendan Gleeson's character as moody. Phenomenal. He of course plays Mad Eye Moody, but most of the situational humor, or if you want to call it the plot, it was very much like the Ballad of Buster Scruggs type situational comedy, and I was not a fan.
Why did you view it as comedy instead of just a drama?
Because nothing happens in the plot or in character developments that aren't there to set up the next bit. Would you disagree?
So
That
I
aren't
am
there to
saying,
set up the next bit. You mean so it's just like tumbling forward?
Like nothing happens in the plot. Everything's just there to set up the next joke.
Okay.
but I do think you can watch this film, not know it's a comedy, never laugh, and still call it a very good film.
No, absolutely not. If it's nothing if it's not a comedy.
That's
In my
just the way they talk.
Ooh, man, I disagree with
Okay.
Warren there. But
I'm
I
curious
also
to hear why then.
I also disagree with you, Will, when you said a while back that like it's not trying to be a comedy, because I think it's really, really going for a comedic edge to it, even if it's not like being sold and marketed as a comedy. I think it's almost first and foremost a comedy. It just in the way that it's just blending comedy with drama. It's not trying to be solely a drama. with comedy here and there. It's very much a Coen Brothers-esque style, taking on that style and trying to just pull out bits of comedy here and there from everyday experiences and from absurd events that happen, which I think really works. I I don't know. I think you can view it as just a drama and not consider it funny and still get a ton out of it. But I think that it's not just because it's not going for the typical style of comedy that you would typically see in a superhero movie. I don't think that necessarily means it's not absolutely hilarious and absolutely shooting for the stars and comedically.
So the reason I'd say it is I do agree with you that it is a comedy, but it's that the way the movie ends is solely drama.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially the last 30 to 45 minutes.
I
There's there's
disagree.
there's there's such a tone change.
Yeah, but that's part of the comedy.
No, I think that's the tone change into drama.
I
I
think
don't
the
think
tone
there's ever.
change, I think that maybe you guys disagree, but I think the tone change is just another bit.
I
You
don't
guys
think
didn't
there's
find that
even.
part of another just situational humor, switching the
No.
tone at the end?
No, I thought that
I thought that
was
was completely
brilliant.
for comedic effect.
Not at all. I thought it was the actions have built up to the consequences of this. The absurdity of the two characters inside of their small little normal world have reached a point that they cannot reconcile to each other, and it's heartbreaking. And it hurts that it's like and they even kind of make light of it. And it's like, Father, I accidentally killed a donkey, and the priest replies like, "Do you think God cares about donkeys?" And to which Brendan Gleeson just replies, "Well, I feel a little guilty about it." And it's Dominic, or not Dominic, Pork has lost so much. To us, it's like a few things. Someone moved away, his best friend stopped talking to him, and his donkey died, and all that stuff can happen to someone. But it's been a really rough like 4 days for him. And for him to go from being this nice guy, and the bar scene is so beautifully well done. Because he says, "Oh no, you were never nice, were you?" And then later on, that
He
scene is
said
followed.
maybe you were never nice.
Oh, he says, maybe you were never nice." And he says, "Oh, you were never nice, were you?" And he finalizes it, and then he walks away, and he touches his sister's cheek, and he looks, he's like, eh. And then the next scene, a few scenes later, he's sitting there with Dominic and tells him about what he did with Declan and sending him away and lying to him just to mess with Colum. And Dominic says, "That's the meanest thing I think that's the meanest thing I've ever heard." That hurts. I didn't find that funny at all. And then he just shouts at him, "This is the new me." I do think that the brilliance of the movie comes in the fact that you can take lines from the second half of the movie, and if you put them at the beginning of the movie, they're funny, but they're not funny at the end of the movie. Such as like, what it's like, "One of your fingers killed my donkey." Like, if you put that line as one of like the opening films, I'm laughing my head off at it. But because it comes at the end, after there's been a shift into this world of drama where actions have now had consequences, or just deciding to not have action, now has consequences. I thought it was beautiful, brilliant, spot on, perfect, and it really pulled at the heartstrings too, for me, especially when Jenny died. I thought that was so well done. And so it hurt. I don't know. It was, I didn't cry over it, but I felt for Pork in that sense of just, here's the last and final thing he thought he had is now gone.
Was Ginny the donkey?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's great insight, Will. I think the what you said about taking a line from the first half, if you put it in the second half, it's tragic. If you put a line from the second half in the first half, it's comedic. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's not trying to put itself in a single lane of comedy or tragedy. And I don't think
Okay.
it's trying to say this isn't like this isn't to just to disagree with you. I think you're spot on. I just think that it's not trying to be one or the other. It's just trying to be its own story, a story about these two people.
That's fair. For me, I judge a lot of what I view the movie as by how the movie ended,
Yeah, and that's
right?
just a
And
personal
it's not the
feeling, which is
typical
great.
Adam Sandler funny guy, funny ending movie, such as Uncut Gems. But here it's really ends solely drama. So that was kind of my takeaway from it. It's like maybe I'm not supposed to view the first half as this big comedy. Maybe it is more sobering and to kind of just because a lot of the time my inner dialogue after the film ran alongside line of Dominic, just like, yeah, I really would see if he would just cut off one finger to make me stop talking to him. And then it's like, oh, it was April Fool's Day. That's why he wasn't talking to me. And I thought there was so much setup and payoff that was rewarding, not necessarily for the sake of a setup of a joke. I just think that that's good quality writing that capitalizes on what you have shown the audience is inside of the world that you are. It's using every resource available in order to build believability. And this movie sets it up perfectly. Like the hook you can see is foreshadowing, but only if you know the ending, right? You have the one character on the cliff who I've taken after my 2 viewings to be the Banshee, Mrs. McCormick or whatever her name is. I don't know. But the ghoul lady. And
On the cliff when
Pork is
Siobhan
waving
is
at it.
The
Yeah,
lady
leaving,
with the
and
Siobhan
hood.
is leaving.
okay,
Yeah.
I do you think
I
that's a
don't know who
Banshee?
else.
I
Yeah,
don't
I don't
know.
know
I
who else can
honestly,
be.
I think
I thought
it's
it might have been Dominic. I thought that might have been when.
I thought it was too chunky, too
wait,
few
what?
robes. It
Okay,
looks like it's a person in a
too
robe.
wide. Okay,
I think that it's there. I don't think it's supposed to be. I'd say it's implicitly a banshee, but not explicitly a banshee, if that makes sense.
yeah,
It's there kind of to make you
Sure.
think
okay,
without explicitly telling you it is or it isn't. But kind of to go back to Will's point, I would almost completely disagree. And I'll preface this with I think it's great that this movie is very clearly trying to be, it's kind of its own quaint thing, and it's trying to be very different than most comedies. But the whole second half, and I apparently you had a very different outlook on that than I did, but
Hmm.
the second half just it keeps getting so much more ridiculous. Even though it gets darker, I think the second half is more of a comedy than the first half.
Really? See, for me, I take the first half of that film, and that first half of the film succeeds in my ability to believe that Pork and Column will do whatever Pork and Column will do next. I think that it is set up well enough within the first 2 days or whatever that Pork's desperation to have his friend back will also lead Column to shove his friend away in whatever manner will come in that second half. And as it escalates, I find myself not stepping away from it, but embracing it and going, how sad this is that these friends have come here. Because of by the ending, or it's like, so I guess my house makes us even then. No, if you had stayed in your house, it would have made us even. But you didn't, did you? So it doesn't, does it? And it's like we're taking this to our graves. And I find that to be a very tragic ending where Column stays on the beach, Pork walks away, and the Banshee just sits in the chair waiting for whatever may come next, right? With the stick that was used to drag Dominic out of the lake.
I guess
Just waiting for the next
I guess
victim.
my
yeah.
question then is for both you guys, did you care about the two characters and
So
their
much.
friendship?
Absolutely. And
Yes.
let's quickly
Because
just
I
say
okay.
spoilers from like heavy spoilers from here on out.
Well,
If
I
you have
mean,
any interest in
yeah.
I know, but if you have any interest in seeing this movie, stop
Guys,
it
this
now.
movie podcast, we're about to talk about everything that
You
I
could
know,
happens
have
in the
guessed.
but
movie. Watch out.
but there's some stuff that happens in this movie, and if you don't know what happens,
Please
then
go
it's
see
quite
this
the
movie.
surprise. So
Please go see this movie.
it gets
Or don't.
it gets 2 out of 3 thumbs up, I think, overall.
Wait, what?
From
Wait, who has three
from the
thumbs?
3 of us.
Or
Okay,
whose
it
thumb did
gets
you
4 out of 6 thumbs up. Okay, I was reducing the fraction. All right, but or maybe it gets 5 out of 6. I don't know. Who knows where Warren is at? But yeah, spoilers. Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
So, essentially what happens, right, is the way Pork keeps bugging Colum, and Colum just says, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. You're boring, and I've got to focus on music because music lasts forever. Music, poetry lasts forever, but kindness doesn't. And to Pork has always said that kindness is enough. And it's very sweet. It's very well thought out in his own simple mind. However, that's not enough to reconcile the two and just say, let bygones be bygones. And Colum then says, every time you talk to me, I'm going to cut off a finger. And as progresses, he eventually goes through all 5 fingers through varying events and stuff like that. And unfortunately, one of the fingers kills Pork's beloved donkey, Ginny. And because of that, Pork decides it's time to go to war.
You're saying that with such a straight face.
Because it's sad, bro. This movie is magnificent.
I guess so. I guess that must be because you were invested in the characters, but I never was invested in the main characters or cared about them at all. So I was not emotionally invested in the movie whatsoever.
I think I have had this with you where I had a completely different viewing experience than other people. And for me, it was Uncut Gems. I watched the movie Uncut Gems, which is supposed to be a very stressful watch through. I laughed the entire time. I was like, this is hilarious. This is so funny.
Uncut Gems is hilarious, but
but
there's
like
one scene in the movie where it's like not very funny and Will cracked up, which is
yeah,
like
and like
that was a
all,
little weird. But
people were like, oh,
but most of the movie is pretty funny, so I'll give you that.
yeah. But
But it will
I
if you're
definitely
not
had a
stressed out,
completely
that's
different
cool.
takeaway. Yeah, no, I had no, not at all. I've also sat through some crazy Thanksgiving,
All right.
so
Yeah.
you know, the old tensions up there sometimes. Anyway, after Jenny dies, Pork goes to war with Colum and says, I'm gonna burn your house down. And he does. And when but he's like, you have a dog, I'm not hurting your dog because what did your dog ever do to me? And
The only thing nice about him.
yep. And why would I ever hurt you? You're the only thing nice about him. And it's such a beautiful line. And just the way these characters have reacted to each other. And then at the very end, or in the second to the last scene, I guess I'll call it, Pork is narrating a letter to his sister Siobhan over in
a reply to one of Shaban's letters to him.
Mm-hmm. And he's just like, and he's filling her in on everything, and basically go through the rundown of Dominic's dead, because he fell off or committed suicide. We're not entirely sure.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe that.
Or he was murdered.
Was he the one on the cliff? Yeah, he wasn't murdered. No. Was he the one on the cliff?
No, because she found him in the lake where Siobhan was. And so he wouldn't, I mean, he could have, but then he has to go from there to the lake. And I always kind of,
sense.
I've always figured it as more of an accidental suicide, of more like messing around by the lake in his sorrows, and he fell in and he drowned in his sorrow. Something more along the lines of that, not necessarily that he killed himself.
Don't think so. I think he killed himself. We keep going.
Or maybe he ate the second finger.
But what ended up happening after that is so Dominic dies, they go to war, and then they try to reconcile on the beach, but Pork just says to Colum, no, I'm not doing this. I've lost too much, and I'm not going through with anything else. And he's become what he set forward by talking to Dominic. He's become the new Pork. He has decided that kindness isn't good enough. He has to enact his own form of vengeance, and that's the only way he'll find peace, because too much of his life has been disrupted in such a short time.
And you didn't see any of that as comedy.
No,
the whole thing,
it was gut-wrenching,
the whole process
bro.
of him, but the whole thing of them switching places, that's all part of the comedy. That's like
no, it's not. I think it's
all.
No, I don't think they've switched places at all. I think it's
because honestly, now he's the one who doesn't want to talk to Coleman. He's the one who's.
I don't think he's not
resorting to violence.
He's definitely not one that doesn't want to talk to him. And he's not. Coleman was never really resorting to violence. He was just threatening to cut a finger off every time Perrick talked to him, which is just, a crazy threat that would hopefully make someone, stand down. But Perrick really, really resorts to violence and says, I'm going to burn your house down, and does burn his house down. And he's just kind of been broken by the end of the movie because of everything, because of the rough 4 days that he's had, because of everything that's happened to him in that short amount of time and how much he's lost. And I don't see it as a reversal at all.
Right. Cutting 5 your own fingers off isn't resorting to violence?
No, it's self-mutilation. Also a sin, but
It's
different.
self-maiming. It's a sin. Yep. What was it now?
You got me there.
You best be hoping I don't die before next time.
Yes.
You will be. You will be straight. Um, I it is tragic and it hurts to see like it going from the scene where Colin Farrell goes and drops off the milk at the one store and then is beat up by the cop. And then he sees Colm and he doesn't want to say anything to him. He doesn't, after they've fallen out for a little bit, but Colm still, he comes by and he picks him up. He puts him on his cart and he drives him back home. And Colin Farrell just kind of sits there speechless, afraid, but like halfway back, he just starts to cry. And he's just been affected by these things and he just doesn't know how to react really because any it's not something that anyone would know how to react to. It's bizarre, it's absurd, and there's comedy in it and there's tragedy in it.
I
But
think it's a very like dry, dark humor.
yeah,
And a lot of those situations, like, it's to create these awkward situations that are like these dry, dark comedic moments.
but if I think if we would I think if we agreed that Colin Farrell became Brendan Gleeson's character at the end of the movie, then Brendan Gleeson would have left Colin Farrell there in the streets. I think by still picking him up and taking him home and still caring about him, even though he wants to distance himself from him, shows that there is really a, a very empathetic core at the that this movie has. I think it's honestly, I see this as a somewhat hopeful movie. I at that final scene at the beach, I when they're there's still some strife. There's definitely a conflict between them. I mean, it's clear, but it's honestly there's a chance that you say to yourself, you know what? In a year, this thing might have blown over. It's possible that these people just they went through a crisis and they weren't sure how to deal with it. They weren't sure how to deal with their emotions and they kind of went crazy. And that's okay because at the end of the day they resolved it. They got through it. I think there's a lot of hope in this movie. Um, of
Do you
course there
think
yeah,
that the Banshee sitting there gives way for that hope to be valid, though?
yeah, I do. I think that there's the Banshee says that a death will come to Inisherin before the end of the
Oh,
month or whatever.
also, for
And she
anybody
said,
listening, the
yes,
Banshee is just a really old lady
yeah,
who is kind of this prophetess of doom and gloom, and no one likes her on the island. So
yeah. She's not
that's all we
even
need.
like in her first scene introduced, she's just an old lady. She's just like the old, kook of the island, and that Dominic calls a ghoul. I call her a ghoul because she is a ghoul. So much in common. But she says a death will come to Inisherin, maybe even two. I think that two have. I think it's Dominic, and I think Jenny counts. I think the tragedy is more or less past them. I think the tragedy has peaked, and it's all downhill from there. Or it has dipped to its lowest point, and it's only uphill from there.
I think the only way that I agree with you here, because I take the opposite approach to the ending of the movie, but the line about taking care of Colm when Park takes care of Colm's dog,
Hmm.
that would be the line that I would hang on to. I, I
That's the
can see
last line in
I
the
can see
film,
where you're
though.
coming from. Yeah, it's like thanks for taking care of my dog, and Park gets
Anytime.
choked up. No, he gets choked up first, and then he
Yes.
says anytime. And I think that's important too as well. But like, why is he getting choked up? And to me, it's he protected something that was taken from him,
Hmm.
and to just extend that extra token of kindness took a lot. But because of the roots of his kindness, he did it. Because he goes into there, he looks at the shears, and part of you wants to think that maybe Pork is deep ending, but he doesn't. He just down and it's I don't know if it's a trope or a tactic or whatever you want to call it, but when animals trust people in movies, we trust those people in movies. And throughout the whole film, no animal is really against either Column or Pork. The two animals are even seen together in one shot, and they're fine being there together.
Hmm.
And
And
to me
there's
that just
so many reaction shots of animals just looking, and like
the
he makes them like
ghost, dude.
they look, and they look judgmental, or they look even concerned. It's funny. It's so, yeah, the goats. Oh man, the goats are hilarious. There's also a shot of two birds that are
Mm-hmm,
fighting,
mm-hmm,
and then later there's a shot of just one bird at
mm-hmm.
the same rock.
So Carter, we saw this what, a week ago?
A week ago tomorrow.
And
Yeah.
Thursday
So
night.
if I'm being completely honest, I don't even remember how it ended. How did it end?
It ended with Colin Farrell after he burned his house down, and then
Uh-huh.
there were the two letters sent back. Um, Shaban sends a letter
Yeah,
to
the final
Perrick
shot on the beach.
saying, yeah. And then so Shaban sends a letter to Perrick. Perrick sends a letter back to Shaban saying, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to stay here. This is my place in
Uh-huh.
Inisherin. Then he goes down to the beach and returns Combs' dog to him because he had to watch him for the night because
Okay.
he took him from his house because he didn't want
Right.
the dog to die in the fire. He didn't want the dog to go in and try to save Coleman and die. But Combs standing on the beach looking at the ocean, and he says him and California just they talk to each other, and they say some stuff, and then it ends when he goes away and says when Parrot goes away, and then Colm turns around and says, "Thanks for taking care of my dog." And he says, "Anytime." And
Okay.
that's it. Then it cuts to the clouds.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that was how it ended.
Yeah, that's the ending. So thoughts on that? Does it recontextualize it for you or no?
No, it's just there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really care for the ending, but I didn't hate it.
One thing Will
Warren,
said was that he seemed like Peric's character was going to go off the deep end. I think he has already. I think he did when he burned down Colm's house. I think that was the extent of it. And I think now that this so much tragedy has been inflicted on Inisherin and between, in their lives, in their relationship, I think I think they're gonna kind of step back for a second and reflect, see what's happened, and try to make up, however that will happen.
I think to me, I think where it lost me as having any semblance of a drama is when the two main characters went off and started chopping fingers off and burning houses down because those decisions felt so inconsistent with any reasonable character that they just became almost like not an allegory, but they became almost like metaphors instead of actual characters to me.
you ever heard about Vincent Van Gogh? Did you know that he snipped off a bit of his ear and said just like a woman? I don't know. It doesn't seem that far fetched
He's
to
the
me.
original metaphor.
I mean, what's
Warren's the kind of
unrealistic to me is
Warren's the kind of guy to complain about real life because it has plot holes. Oh,
Very true.
that happened to this guy? Nah, that's lame. That would never happen. That's so
No, but it
Warren,
just
you need to
lost
hear more
like
backwoods Kentucky stories more often,
hmm
brother. People will
it
do
just broke
stuff.
everything that it already established in the film about the characters.
No, I
You
think
guys
it
didn't
No, it
added
feel that?
on
didn't.
to it.
No, it
No, it
didn't.
added to it. No, 100% added to it.
How so?
It adds to how these two normal dudes just embraced a little bit of insanity and hurt each other more than they hurt themselves in the process.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? It's like he's willing to sacrifice his fiddle playing career, right? Just to accomplish this one goal. How it's so sad. Like the first finger is really funny, but the other four is like,
Yeah, it's like, dang. Because he can
and
still play the fiddle with four fingers, you know?
yeah, exactly. And you see him playing it. Da, 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 da,
Uh-huh.
da.
But then his whole
Um,
hand's gone. He's just kind of conducting,
mhm,
bleeding all over his fiddle.
mhm.
Pudgy fiddle player. But I think it's a movie about how the choices we make can affect other people. And I don't think any of the characters ever betrayed
Isn't that
their
like every
character.
movie ever though?
Yeah, but I think this one really, really tries to mine away and see the inner turmoil that's in people and see how things can bring out inner turmoil in people. there's there's a lot of existentialism in this. There's a lot of, people just concerned about life in general. And the priest says twice, he says to Colm when Colm's in confession, he says, "How's this despair?" And the first time when Colm cuts himself off somewhat successfully from Perek, he says something like it's pretty good, or it's not too overbearing. And then the second time, which is like towards the very end of the film, after Jenny dies, he says it's back a bit. And that's that's absolutely something that's just running throughout the entire film that applies to all four of the lead characters, I think. And they all deal with it in their own ways because they're all characters. Just because a character doesn't show their entire personality within the character, how do I say this? The personality that a character shows within the first 5 minutes is not the extent of their personality. It can be in
I
some
agree.
movies. That's sometimes how some movies are set up, and that works great. I think we talked about this in Little Miss Sunshine, and like you get the dinner table scene, and they're all there, all the characters, them, and you're just on the ride after that. But this movie is something that unfolds very slowly, and as things
Yes,
happen,
very slowly.
and as things, okay, so you were bored. The
I
classic,
was bored. Yes.
okay, the classic
You
complaint.
you were
I was
bored?
bored, therefore movie not good.
Wait, you were bored.
No, I didn't not
There
like
it
it because it was
is.
boring.
We cracked it.
How were you bored?
Pack it up.
Because they spent like 15 minutes making one joke about him being self-conscious that
Oh
he's
my
dull.
goodness, dude! You have character building.
But he's
One,
always
you
been
just
dull.
saw Wakanda Forever, which is 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Everything they built up, they just flipped it, and there were different characters in the second half of the movie.
No, they weren't. I'm explaining this.
Yeah,
No,
the problem
no.
was not the characters. The problem was the consistency of the characters.
You saw Wakanda Forever twice. That is 6 hours, my guy. And this 1.5 hour movie, you're like, bro, this is boring, man. I ain't
It's an
seen no
hour.
CGI in 10 minutes.
It's an hour 50, but
That's fair. That's fair. Sorry, I over exaggerate
it's all good. It's all
a
good.
little.
Warren's exaggerating more here. We're good. But no, it's how characters are revealed, Despair, mental health, which is something that, it's a buzzword nowadays, but something that like really was brushed aside back in the 1920s, Is this 1920s or 1820s? I think it's 1920s. I don't know if you guys know, sorry. And I think that applies to Siobhan. Not the first scene, but one of the first scenes, she says, "Perk, do you ever get lonely?" And he says, "Huh?" She goes, "Lonely." And then later, after, they go through it, Colm says one of the defining lines in the movie, I think, in terms of the tragic side. He says, "I'm worried that I'm just entertaining myself while I stave off the inevitable. Don't you worry about that sometimes too?" He's asking Siobhan, and she says no. And he says, "Yeah, you do." And then the very next scene, Siobhan goes and she puts her letter in the box at the post office and mails her reply to the library on the mainland that says she's gonna go get a job there. She's gonna leave Inisherin, and because this kind of completes her little inner struggle arc. It starts with her saying, "Do you ever get lonely?" And it ends with her making the hard choice to leave her brother and her friends and go try to find a satisfying life.
And to me, so much of Pork is bounced off of some of those very same interactions as well. Because he really does cherish her. It's like when he's drunk in the bar and he's like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. But you know what I like? It's like, my dad was kind. I remember him. My mom, she was kind. I'll
Yep.
remember her. And my sister.
Nice.
Oh yeah, and my sister, she's nice. I'll remember her.
And I'm gonna remember her.
And it's in the world that Colum now lives in of desiring to be remembered, all Pork wants to do is matter to his friends.
Yeah.
And if that isn't an incredibly touching character motivation, and we live inside of these movies that have super grandeur plots, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about, of being these acting as normal people rather than
Hmm.
as superheroes and larger than life biopics or something like that. It is just this, he just wants to have a good life and be kind and be nice with his best friend in the whole wide world and live a simple life. And that's all he wants. And it's beautiful. And when that gets disrupted, it hurts him, because he says a few of his lines are like, lonely. What's wrong with everybody? And then he walks out in response to Siobhan. And then he also has the one line where he's talking to Siobhan again, and and she just says like, oh, he's a bit depressed. It's like, well, if he's a bit depressed, can't he just keep him to himself? And he represents partial ignorance in this as well, of just, well, why wouldn't he want to be my friend? I'm a nice guy. And he's self-absorbed, sure, but he's also very nice. And Colum wants to be self-absorbed, but in a reserved and set apart type of way.
So I agree with you in the sense that like some of my favorite movies this year have been about just random insignificant people who never make history books and they don't do anything that spectacular. It's just, people doing everyday normal things. And I agree that can be a great setup. This one in particular, though, this one in particular, and maybe this is a self-indictment of my own cynicism, but everything tragic that happens in the movie, between like Dominic dying or burning the house down or any of those things that happened or the donkey dying, I just saw those all as the heartbeat of this film's comedy.
So you saw all the tragedy as just another funny joke, right?
Pretty much.
Hmm.
It's all just like, it's almost like Shakespearean, the tragic comedy. It's like this.
That's
It's
hilarious because
basically just
when
it's
Will compared it to Macbeth, which is a weird comparison, but Will compared it to Macbeth like a week ago, and you go, "What? It's nothing at all like Macbeth. What's
okay. It's not
wrong
like
with you?"
Macbeth, but it does have that Shakespearean like tragic comedy sense of like, yes, this is a tragic story, but the tragedy's there for comedic effect.
I see. I just
Partly, but I
go
think
go
it's
the
just
complete
telling a
opposite
simple story
direction.
of everyday life, and like it's telling, over a course of 50 years, there's this one crazy event that happens on this island. It's, the
That's not.
the,
Is
the
it
biggest
everyday
event
life
of
or is
us.
it a crazy event though? Because you can't
That's
Yeah,
have
just
both.
life. That's just
yeah,
life
but
because
like
sometimes
if
that's
they'd
what
done the
happens in
4
life.
days prior to
And
day one, it would
sometimes
be a
that
horror
deserves
movie.
that sometimes that
Yeah, but this is about that crazy event, not everyday life.
yeah, because it's a
Okay.
simple small scale island and there's this thing that happens and it's going to
Yes.
become the stuff of legend
Yes.
and it deserves to be have a story told about it.
Well,
And it's making the case for not everything has to be this super extravagant, story that's been told that Will was trying to portray that to say, not portray. Sometimes the stories like this matter. They matter because of people like Porrick who they just want to be kind. They just want to have friends and they just want to be nice with their friends.
I think this movie would have been better without the crazy events.
I think just as it's just barely before it's pushing the point of overstaying its welcome, Brendan Gleeson walks in and says, I'm going to cut a finger off if you talk to me. And I think it just refuels itself right there
That's
and
where the
just
movie kind of
becomes,
lost me.
well,
Is
yeah.
that where you turned off, or is that where you? But like, at what point did you actually turn off to the film? Because you've kind of given us several points throughout the movie that you've just said, "Why disconnected here? I disconnected there." So what was like the initial? This isn't me.
Well, I was bored up until he started cutting his own fingers off, and then I was just annoyed.
So at no point during the movie you liked the movie.
No.
Hmm.
Like even from the start, you're just like, Tate Ireland.
I mean, at the start, you're just completely blank. You're waiting to see what happens, see if you like it, and then I was waiting. I mean, I wanted to like this movie. I was, sitting there, got 10 minutes of the movie. I was like, all right, just waiting for any reason to be invested in this movie, any reason whatsoever.
At what
Could
point
be
did you stop
emotional
liking this
stakes or
movie?
something cool that happens in the plot or anything that happens. And I was just waiting and waiting, and I never felt invested. I was waiting another hour and 40 some minutes.
At what point did you go, I'm not going to like this movie because I know this is a Willem Carter kind of movie?
I think in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
All right, fair enough.
Actually, I wasn't really thinking about that until after the movie. And I was like, you know what? I bet Will and Carter really did like this
Yeah.
movie.
and my mom, who said she'd
Mhm.
see it a second time, by the way.
Because I think after like driving home, I realized how much it felt like a Coen Brothers movie.
But you
I was
haven't
like,
really
oh,
watched a Coen Brothers movie.
I've seen enough to know that this had that feel.
He's got that Coen osmosis from us, you know.
It's because they're
Yeah,
that
really.
where I can't handle the sheer power of good filmmaking.
No, we
It's
can't.
incredible. Except for Vast of Night, which we all like. I'm wrestling with your take on this believability and the lack of it there. Do you not do
It's not
you think that
believability, it's just consistency.
so everything is
Because
consistent throughout everyone's human life ever, and crazy events don't just happen
the
over
two
the span
main
of 2 weeks?
characters, like, it just, and maybe part of it's because they're making light of such like horrendous events, and I usually am not a fan of that. But also, just as soon as the main characters start like, basically trying to murder each other, it's just like a light switch in the script. There's no reason behind
that's
it.
not to be taken lightly
I
at
think
all.
that's a reductionist take on it. I don't think they're trying to murder each other. I think they're pushing each other more and more and more. They push each other one way and they push back the other.
Well,
They
yeah, I
push each
agree
other
they're
one
not
way, and
actually
the
trying to murder
tension.
each other, but
Well, I know you're not saying
they're
literally.
going to such extremes that
I think it's a very slow push to those extremes, though. I think there's buildup and there's a lot of tension, and it it kind of explodes when Colm cuts 4 of his fingers off at the same time, and then when Colin Farrell burns Colm's house down. I think that's the extreme. But I think to say like whether or not the actions they took to get there are believable to you is a fair that's fair if you don't think they are. But
well,
to
yeah,
say
it's not
that
believability that
those
matters, it's
extremes are just
consistency.
come out of nowhere is wrong.
What do you mean by consistency? Because you said that word 4 times, but you never
Yeah.
defined it.
Yeah, so you have what's his name? However you pronounce the main character's name, Colin Farrell's character.
Mhm.
For the
Correct.
first, what is it, 45, 50 minutes,
Mhm.
he's just, he's doing the same thing every day.
I
Like,
don't think so. I
talking
think
to his
he's
donkey, he's going out drinking at
slowly
the pub.
descending into he's descending into despair. He's seeing the 3 people. I don't know if Dominic's closest to him, but the 3 other main characters in the movie that are closest to him in this point of time also descend into despair, and he's not sure what to make of it, and he just starts to lose himself over those first 40 minutes. And then you
Well,
get
I
to
will say, I think the more egregious offender is Brendan Gleeson's character,
Mhm.
because he just starts chopping his fingers off.
But
you gotta stick to it, man.
Like, I'm annoyed with you.
Commit to
gonna...
the bit, like
okay, but
It is
here's the
very much a
thing:
bit.
he doesn't, right? He doesn't commit to the bit, not entirely. He only chops his fingers off after Pork has talked to him the 3rd time.
Oh, that makes okay. Yeah.
No.
because the first time in the bar, he
The-
says that's the most interesting he's been in years.
True.
I
but
think
that's
I like him
not
again.
True, but that's not but that's not like the character, right? And I was like, oh, maybe for me, that was like, maybe it was just a resolve thing. Maybe Dominic was right here, right?
Yeah.
And because the next day he doesn't chop his fingers off.
Yep.
Because Pork talked to him and then he's just like, well, what do you need to just leave me alone? And he doesn't. So there's actually 2 more times in between the first finger and the cutting off of the other 4, right? And it leads you to believe maybe they're going to work through this. But then it all culminates in that one final act where Pork comes to Colin's house.
You're saying this with such a straight face.
Because
he didn't cut all his fingers off at the same time.
No.
It
No,
is
but-
funny though. There's humor to it. See, there's both. They clash, but there is a sense of
Warren, have you
Like
ever
tragedy.
watched Friends Fallout? Like Fallout hard? Or have you ever been a part of it.
Yes. Have you ever seen friends fall out and start cutting fingers off? I'm gonna go with
No,
no.
but I've seen people go to war at different social events and all that stuff. I've
That's
done it.
very different. That's very, very different.
It's not. It's
That's
the
not what
same
happens
amount
in
of
this movie.
destruction. I'd argue.
This is far more
I,
extreme.
I don't think
with the small scale that happens here,
we're not in
this
our
is what
we're not in our late 40s. We haven't lived our lives
we're not jaded
on
yet.
Inisherin, kind of, running in circles. We haven't got to this point, so we don't know what we do, you know?
I'm not saying
I
that it's
think
what
we've
we
both
would or
seen
wouldn't
enough of
do.
And it's a crazy event. It's a movie. It's a hook. It's in the trailer. I didn't watch the trailer, which is why I was amazed. But in the trailer, he's like, "I'm gonna cut my fingers off," and then you're supposed to go and say, "Oh man, this guy's gonna cut his fingers off." You know, it's storytelling. There, you have to. You don't always, but most of the time, you've got to have a concept, and you've got to say, "This is what's gonna happen," and it's gonna escalate or it's gonna de-escalate from this situation. There's a weird little hook that this movie has that people want to see, and you got to
I
build the
agree.
story
It's
around that.
just it's a bad concept.
Well,
I don't think it's bad
that's
at all. I think
well, I
it's
think all right.
brilliant.
So Warren's complaints are he was bored and it's a bad concept, and then it
No. My main
after
complaint
so
was it's a comedy that's not funny.
okay, that's fair. The other two that I mentioned, I don't know how fast Warren will hold to those, but in my opinion, those are just awful, awful arguments. Bad things to have wrong with this movie. Not a way to approach movies at all. You gotta just go with it. You gotta just go with the flow and see what happens.
And I think to build off that, right? For me, it just how much extra family drama has happened, and you guys have all your own family drama too. It's not like this is something that's just unique to me. Is you've all seen freak stuff happen in other people's lives. And I remember when me and Daniel were going through some stuff together. And it was just a crazy like 4 or 5 things happened. There were like 4 or 5 different fallouts that happened to both of us. And it was just the wildest week ever. And I won't get into it because of just take too long. But crazy things happen that you never expect. Like some of the stories about Mikey, my beloved cousin, who is now a certified therapist for people like him in Kentucky. Absolutely testimony, growing in his faith too. Fantastic guy. But like some of the stories I have about Mikey, Warren, if I put those in a movie, to me, it's almost like, of course it's believable because people can do crazy things, right? And people can go to any length to get something that they believe they really want. It's like people pay thousands and thousands of dollars for clothes that say Supreme on it. And it's just
No, I agree with you on that. I guess I should rephrase it too. It wasn't believable for Brendan Gleeson's character.
but I think
It's not that it can't happen. It's just that it didn't make sense or
He's this
fit with his
old,
character.
surly, wash-up guy that's kind of just, as I said, he's going through a
I mean, if
crisis.
it fit for you guys, then great. It
Okay.
it really did not work for me.
for
in my
me, it's
head.
Yeah.
also how much he's kind of baffled by the fact that he did it too. When Siobhan comes and returns the finger and they're talking about it, and the way he presents these lines and stuff is very almost surreal of, yeah, thought I was gonna black out while I was doing it. That was crazy.
Doesn't hurt
And
anymore though.
yeah, it actually feels kind of fine. And he cut off the one that impacted his playing the least, right? Kind of giving himself that I'm gonna do this crazy awful thing once, and then he's gonna see that I'm serious, and we're never gonna have to do it again. But then after he's done it the first time, right? It doesn't hurt anymore. So what's the big loss gonna be? And I really do see how a character could chop off their own hands, right? You see crimes of passion and stuff happen all the time, and murders and other things. And it's people will go to crazy lengths, like I said, to just get what they think they need or want. And to me, Pork also sees this as a crazy idea of, yeah, how many fingers do I have? 10 fingers to show I'm not mental. How many do you have? 9 fingers. 9 fingers, the epitome of mental. That's right, the epitome. And the way the characters bounce off each other is Pork for the longest time believes this is crazy. But then as soon as the one finger kills Jenny, he's just, that's it. He's like, okay, no, I'm going to do something that's equally unbelievable. Because everything's gone. And what else are they going to take from me? So to me, it's like, I really will defend this movie, and probably most aspects of it. The one scene that you guys know, I didn't think that one needed to be in the film, but it's there.
Daddy won't like him if we disturb him while he's been.
But like, I do think it's sad. I think it's a very kind of melancholy ending. And I don't know.
I don't think so.
But the ending was the least sad part.
I think the worst of it's over. I think they got past it.
We'll have to wait for Banshees
I like
of
to be hopeful.
Inisherins. And that's cool, Carter, but that's unrealistic. Because life sucks, and the only respite is death, where we enter in the kingdom. So, just saying. But yeah, I really wish you loved this movie as much as I know I did, because I think it's something special. I really do think that it is not a movie that's gonna come out that often that's this good while being this small and this compact and this concise and this consistent, and this well loved and well put together and this well thought out, beautifully shot, beautifully located, well cast. It's really hard to find flaws in this movie for me.
Those are some interesting descriptions.
Yeah.
Okay.
But really, I do of course respect your opinion, right? Like, if you didn't like it, then you didn't like it, and I'm never going to tell you to rewatch it so that you have to change your opinion. That's your opinion. But I do hope we find that film for us one day that's all just upper echelon, because I think that's going to be a really fun podcast.
Happen eventually.
And this one is fun too. And we've got some bangers coming up, like Fableman's, I think, could do it. Or if not Fableman's, Oppenheimer. And if not Oppenheimer, Barbie. So,
I mean, we got Glass Onion in 2 weeks.
oh my gosh,
there's an off chance for that too.
Actually, that might be our best shot. Maybe we'll see. Barbie's pretty good too. You know?
Yeah, Barbie's our number one shot. But I'm talking about recent future.
Warren, I know it's not
future.
really...
What? You mean near future?
That's what I meant. Yes.
Carter,
Warren,
is there something you want to tell us?
Warren, I know it's always not awesome, and Carter's probably not a fan of this practice, but what would you have changed about the movie to improve it? Should you have been writer, director, or would you have changed it to be a comedy that you would have liked, or would you have taken it all out, made it a drama?
I think it's fair to say
more characters, less characters.
No, I think it's fair to say I don't think this should have happened. I think that it should have been rewritten a little bit more. I think that it should have tried to emphasize this more. What I don't like is I know please don't think that I'm just taking shots at you guys. I don't know. It's just my personality. I don't like stopping in the middle of a movie and saying, my interest has been broken. I have checked out. I am now going to critique everything else that happens from now on because I'm no longer invested. I don't know. I just don't think like that. I just kind of roll with it while it's going, and then afterward, that's when I think about it critically.
For me, it's just like, nah, man. If it's because I don't know it for me that, but anyway, Warren.
Yeah,
Warren,
usually,
go for Warren.
What
Carter, usually I don't think that way unless there's something that really stands out. I'm like, oh, I wish they. Sometimes for small things, like I wish they'd done that small thing.
In 50% of the movies you watch, something small stands out.
Yeah, but as far as like overall like big changes, I wouldn't think of that until after the movie. Okay, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, but Warren, I am interested in what you would have done in this film to make it a film that you would have enjoyed more.
So you're saying like if I were like a writer and somebody tossed a script across the table to me, they're like, can you, proofread this, revise this, and change some things?
Yeah.
Sure, if you want to go for that, go for it. But like anything about this movie, what could it have done to be better?
Well, I would have taken the script, would have stood up, walked over, and thrown it in the trash bin.
No, okay, but treat the question seriously. Like what would you?
I'm being serious. Like
really,
I think it's just
unsalvageable.
The entire core of the movie. It's just I would not have made this movie.
Okay, so to you, it is unsalvageable.
Oh, completely.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. I don't think there's much hope for it's not like there were a couple small things that could have been changed. This was well, we've already talked about this, but it's a comedy that's not funny. It's not much you could do to salvage that.
Warren, what was the last comedy you saw that was funny?
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
No, I'm making him say Minions: Rise of Gru right now.
Oh, okay.
That actually was much funnier than this, in my
I
opinion.
hate you with every fiber of my being. But I'm glad you liked that movie. Carter, was I allowed to check out of that movie and not have a good time? Because I checked out of that
I
movie
don't.
and didn't have a good time.
I mean, you're allowed. I don't see how you check out of a movie when 90% of the audience is wearing suits. It's kind of legendary, kind of a once in a lifetime experience.
It is funny walking into the theater and people like, Minions? They're like, you know it.
Yeah. Yo, are you guys seeing Minions? Yeah.
Great experience.
Oh man,
It was. Never gonna forget it. Warren, I hope our friendship matters enough to you that you would never chop off our fingers. But one day I'm gonna stop being friends with you and we'll see how it goes.
No, see, that would be more believable than your own fingers.
No, I'll chop off my fingers.
If Brendan Gleeson's character had done that instead of that would have made more sense.
No, it wouldn't have. Absolutely not, because that's resorting to violence.
It would have made more
that's
sense
what
in
this
my
movie...
head, at least. Because then it's like anger, vengeance, like a powerful motivation.
But what anger does he have? He
because-
just wants to be loved.
Because here's the thing.
This?
He just wants to be loved. Yeah, that's the thing. But here's the thing. It's a civil war. It's the backdrop of the Civil War. And that's confusing to people. The cop says, I don't understand. He's like, the IRA guys, they're killing some of the others. And then like he's like, or maybe it's the other way around.
6 pence and a free lunch.
It's 6 pence and a free lunch. They could be executing you. I know. But he says, it's confusing to me. I liked it much better when we were just fighting the English. And if they were just fighting the English, that's when Brendan Gleeson would have cut Colin Farrell's fingers off. But this movie really is, I think it's really taking a stance. What you said, I'm using the war as a metaphor, the way the movie uses the war as a metaphor.
Okay.
See, I really think this movie is just championing.
I don't get it, though. Wait, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes.
Wait, Warren, do you not see the connection between the Civil War in the background and the Civil War?
And the Civil War between Coen and Perk?
Yeah, well, what does that have to do with vengeance versus self-harm?
Because it's not about vengeance. If this was set during a movie where they're actually truly fighting an enemy, the Irish truly fighting the British, then Brendan Gleeson might have been more aggressive. He might have been angrier. He might have been less kind. Because despite Colin Farrell's drunk rant, I think there is kindness in Brendan Gleeson and niceness. I think he's just kind of lost it for the time being. But Brendan Gleeson doesn't want to go and hurt Colin Farrell. He doesn't want to hurt his donkey. He doesn't want to hurt his sister. He just wants him to leave him alone. He just doesn't want to be friends anymore.
That's the problem.
Okay, let me. But
I think it would have been far.
But this movie is
better.
It's a civil war. It's a civil war between them. They're brothers at heart.
Yeah, but the people in the
they're
Civil
both
War,
Irish. They're both
Inisherin.
War,
like destroying their own towns.
I know, because it's absurd. It's something that isn't good.
Exactly.
It's harmful to everyone around.
Exactly.
And these people at the end of the movie, I think these two guys, I think they realize that, and I think they're going to try to work past it in the future. I think this movie is really championing. Edit, please. It's championing compassion and niceness and pacifism, I think. I think it's saying we do need more niceness in the world. I think it's saying that niceness is the most valuable thing that humans can possess. I think even though that people may not remember the niceness of the 17th century, even though, what lasts? Don't say something like music. Music lasts. Even though we remember the art and stuff like that of ages ago, I think this movie is saying that there's more important things, that you got to look at what's in front of you, and you got to take that for what it is, and you have to value that above all.
I think it could have said that in a much better way.
Carter, I think I'm coming around to what you said about It is hopeful at the end.
I think it
because
is.
the war's because that's what Siobhan's letter says, is the war's
The
about to
war's
up
about
soon to
to
be
end.
over.
There may be work for you here.
Huh.
And even though Colin Farrell rejects it, I don't think he's rejecting peace. I think there's I think everything he's done in the movie has been just on a quest for peace. And he's just hurt. He's just taken aback. He just doesn't know how to react. He's he's probably lonely. He's probably in despair. And because Colm has driven him to that. And I think he takes drastic measures, but I think they realize the tragedy that they've brought upon themselves and upon their island at the end. And I think when the the second to last shot in this, the last one's of the clouds, but the second to last shot is just perfect. It's one of the best shots in the year, in my opinion. It's Brendan Gleeson looking at the sea. We've talked about it. He's got his dog next to him. The goal's in the foreground, and all you see is her and Brendan Gleeson. So you're looking at Brendan Gleeson, and then Colin Farrell emerges from the back of the goal, walking away. And at first you didn't see him, but then he walks away, and it's because of what came before it. There is a a real sense of hopefulness, I think, at the end. It's amazing when you can show two people not facing each other, going through what they've gone through, and walking away from each other at the end, but but still but still have that shot evoke the feeling of these two guys are going to make it. They're going to be okay. I, I I think that's powerful.
Was that ever in doubt to you guys?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think it was ever in doubt.
I really didn't think that
I think that
Colin
like
was gonna leave
But
the
maybe that's
house.
because I saw it as a comedy the whole time.
I
maybe
really
it's hard if
100%.
you're not invested, but I think I, like the whole movie, it's such a unique concept. It's such a unique movie, and it's like, how are they going to get out of this? How are they going to resolve this? You know? And then the ghoul says a death will come to Inisherin, maybe two, and it's like, I don't think they're both going to die, but one of them really, really could die. And yeah, as you said, Will, I
I think
didn't
this
think
is
Colm
that
was going to leave the
original
house.
concept. It's two people who
I think
like
it
some stuff
is.
happens, and they become mortal enemies,
I think
and
that's a
then some stuff
reductionist
happens, and they
view.
realized they're not mortal enemies, and they can be
I'm
friends again.
very much with Carter on this one as well. I think that's a gross misunderstanding of what the film is trying to portray,
Yep.
and the characters in it, and how the characters' minds work, and what the characters are willing to do at lengths without directly harming each other,
Yeah.
except for what Pork does, because Pork's the only one who ever actually harms um Column. And I
And harms
really,
Jenny, but it's an accident, and he
yeah,
feels awful.
he does. And because he is,
And
I
that's pretty
really,
much what ends it.
I
That's
was
why I think it's
really
the second
ready.
death.
I was
Yeah.
really ready for a cut to black the second after Pork does check to see if Column's inside, and while he's burning his house down, and Column is, and he's just sitting there smoking.
Hmm.
And I was ready for the final shot to be Column sitting there smoking, and Pork on the other side of the glass looking away, and then just cut to black. I was ready. Um,
Even the cop, who's
Silhouette.
one of the angriest, meanest characters in the
he's
movie,
humbled by the death of his son.
he goes to
Yep.
Perk's house. He's gonna beat
Yep.
him up, and then the ghoul he brings him aside and says, "Hey, your son's dead," and he,
He's hurting.
he's hurt at the end of it, and it's just another thing that everyone is hurt from this, and I think that they're gonna try to find a way to resolve it. They're gonna try to way to work past it because of what's happened. Sometimes it takes things like that, drastic things to happen in order to really, I don't want to say heal, not heal
Kickstart
fully, at
recovery.
least, to kickstart recovery. Yeah.
It's like um if a school will surround a family in love who just lost their kid in a drunk driving accident or something like that. A state will surround someone because of like a bombing or something that happens, right? Or a shooting. You really do see outpourings of love, and it's when the bigger stuff happens that you realize just how petty some of your stuff was, and how self-absorbed. And I know a lot of this movie spoke to me of just like, and when you get so self-absorbed with what you want, you forget thinking about what other people might need. Um, and it's so touching, and I find myself wanting to root for these characters as well, and their recovery. But until now, I didn't really know if that was possible.
So yeah, it takes big events sometimes to really for us to zoom out and kind of reflect on things. Uh, Colm says, "I killed a miniature donkey. It was an accident, but I still feel bad." And the priest says, "Do you think that God cares about the death of a miniature donkey?" And Colm responds with, "I'm not sure he does, and that troubles me." And that's another something. That's another thing that these characters are wrestling with about death and just wasting their lives and not having a purpose, really, I think. And it's something that they they say maybe if they well, Colm really says maybe sitting in a pub every day talking, for 2 hours about what you found in your little ponies droppings isn't worth your time. Maybe you kind of want to follow your passions, like music. And I think I don't think Colm's gonna. I mean, it's hard to not. He doesn't really have fingers anymore. It's gonna be hard to fiddle, but I don't think he's gonna give up his passion for music anytime soon at all. But I don't. I think he's gonna try to unite it with his friendship for Colin Farrell because he just wants to, he wants to mend things after he accidentally takes the life of a donkey and hurts his friend because there's niceness in him. He doesn't want to hurt his friend.
It's little lines in the movie that also help build the depth of these characters as well. Um, just how Pork, he's willing to reach to anything to just reel his friend back. He's like, how's your tune coming along? And he
Yep,
asks it like 3 or 4 times, just to like show interest in what his
that
friend
scene.
wants. It hurts. It's like, what do I have to say to you to get you to leave me alone? And it's gut wrenching because you watch people in real life fall out of relationships, of friendships, of all this stuff, and unless it was really shallow to begin with, there's usually some major emotional fallout. I know there has been with me, um, and certain life events and stuff like that, and it's just you empathize. For me, I empathize a lot with Pork, and just going, man, what a rough week he's having. And to think about, like, if Daniel or you guys just stopped talking to me, I'd lose my
It's like,
mind.
what would you do? I know.
I I don't know what I'd do. But I'd still try to worm my way in, see if I was welcome, find out something to apologize for.
You gotta.
And you just embrace that desperate side of, I'd borderline do anything. Maybe not what the characters did in this film, though. But
Of course. But
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 yeah,
we're not in our late 40s off the
true,
coast of Ireland.
true. But Siobhan even says that, right? She just says, "You're all dull," to call him too. She's like,
No, no, she
"You're."
says you're all that's just what we need, another silent person on Inisherin, right?
No,
Does
but
she
she
say you're
also
all dull?
calls dull, call him dull. I was like, he's dull. He's always been
He's
dull.
always been
And
dull.
then after she goes,
Oh,
"You're
you're
all
all dull.
dull,"
Yep.
and she is like the shining intellectual of all this stuff. Because
Yes.
also, what does she do eventually?
Your sister,
She
she
corrects
thinks.
him.
Yes.
She corrects him on his history, that he's like,
Mozart was
Mozart
18th
in the
century.
17th century. Everybody remembers him. She goes, Mozart was the 18th century. And then she just walks away. And it's just how high and mighty he is over Porrick doesn't really matter, because
But
it's just a game of interest.
she's so not high and mighty.
She isn't.
She still really tries to mend things between
Mhm.
these two. She doesn't, she's sad when she leaves the island, but she knows that she has
Mhm.
to. It's not because she's like, these people suck, these people are stupid, these people are dull, I want to get away from them. She even cares about Dominic at the end, even though when he
Yeah.
comes over to her house, she's never dismissive of him, she gets angry, and then she even though
Wild.
you just keep saying wild, wild.
Yeah, wild.
She
Oh,
goes from
good.
she goes from being annoyed to feeling sorry for him,
Yes,
As
or
yes.
at
soon
least
as he says,
sympathetic.
But
"Do you
I
ever think
think
you could
she's
fall in
just
love with a
she's
guy like
really
me,
uh-huh. She's like, no, I don't think so, Dominic. I'm
even
sorry.
when I'm your age?"
No, I don't think so.
And she shakes her head, but she's holding back
She
tears.
is, yeah.
It hurts, man, because then everything about Dominic makes just a little bit more sense.
Hmm.
And you know that also with the abuse that he's gone through, that's gonna change his personality.
Hmm.
And give him certain inhibitions when it comes to social interactions. And just to see that the dad's consequences come full circle when Dominic is found dead, whether or not from suicide or just an accident. Either way, Dominic the character dies after he's rejected
Yeah.
by Siobhan.
When
It's
he's
just
rejected, that's the last scene you see of him.
yep.
The next time he shows up, he's dead in the
Mhm.
water. I really think he killed himself because I
Mhm.
think there's a lot more to Dominic than most people on the island think. Will, you brought this up. You're the one that
Mhm.
said this walking out after the second time we saw it. Because he says touche, and then they're like, what? He's like, touche, chez, it's French. And then they're like, they just kind of sit there like, huh, you know this? And this was after, um, this was after Siobhan said, he's the dimmest one on the island. You don't think, and Perk says, you don't think I'm dim, right, Siobhan? Siobhan says, no, I don't think you're dim. That's Dominic by a mile. And because, everyone's like, he's the village idiot. But there really is more to him than most people see. There really is struggle in everyone. There's inner turmoil in everyone. Everyone's alive. Everyone feels things. Um, it's just how they show it and how their personalities work that sometimes people are dismissive of them. But I think everyone on this island, deep down, they all care about each other. It's just the surface level that they go at it, and there's some anger, there's some strife, but it, once you break down the walls to these characters' outer their toughness, their their facades that they're trying to be a great artist
Do you mean like the
or something
masks
like
that
that.
are hanging inside of Column's house
There
that are
you go.
brilliant and
Look at
beautiful
that.
foreshadowing?
Uh-huh. There's really a deep empathy and a deep niceness and a care for others that tragedy sometimes brings out.
Even Miss McCormick says, "I'm going to pray it's not you or your sister." I don't know if that's very nice. I wasn't trying to be nice. I was
Just
trying to
trying to
be
be
accurate.
accurate.
Um, and like even she wants to be friends with Siobhan and stuff like that. And I think you're right. The characters do care about each other. The policeman is a bit of a stretch from time to time simply because of how brutal he can be, but you do see him forge his friendships in his own way
Yeah.
and then get humbled at the very end at the cost of the life of his son though.
Hmm.
And but that setup is just amplified by the character design and the costuming of him versus his son. Dominic is always dirty. His clothes are shabby. But what does the officer want? The officer wants him to iron his shirts, to be home by certain times, to be regimented and disciplined, and yet his clothes are always more of the underlying reason for the person. It's all the abuse. It's all the drinking at drinking, smoking, and all this stuff, and just
Yeah.
he's become
And I think Dominic said, when he was when he went and kind of proposed, he was kind of like, this is my last chance. This is it.
well, there goes that dream.
There goes that dream.
And then he just says, "I'm gonna go do that thing that's over there." And he just gives the awkward wave, puts his hand behind his head, and walks away. And I think that was the saddest point for me in the film. That was the biggest heart pull
I,
moment. Jenny is close, but I
for me,
felt
it's
so much for Dominic.
yeah,
I
I
don't
did
know
too.
why, but I just kind of felt like none of who he was his fault. I saw him as a lot of a victim of abuse, and that's why he
Yeah.
was the way that he was, because he has those little glimpses of the brighter person who just wants a friend, who just wants to impress a girl. Like even though she reads, oh my gosh, reading. But he knows a word of French. And it's like, how did he hear that if no one else on the island heard it? And it's the lengths he went to. But as this victim of abuse, he's become so much a shell of what he could have been. It's led to the death of the character, metaphorically and literally. And I think that totality of his end, because it wasn't a hopeful one at the proposal, and it wasn't a hopeful one when he's found in the lake, right? He doesn't win in any scenario, and it's not because he did anything wrong. And I think that's what hurts the most.
Yeah, again, it's dealing with the choices of others.
It was something, was it someone? It's a quote from someone forever ago, but it's not your fault, but it is your problem. And that's what happens to Dominic, and that's also Jenny in another way as well, of just because this dude is chucking his fingers at the front door, she kind of nibbles on him and dies. And that's also set forward that she might do it because of the
they put his finger in a
they
box.
put her finger in the box, and she keeps nuzzling the box and everything like that. And I do need to rewatch it a third time, because there are a few questions I still have of just where does the blanket come from that Jeff Jenny. And I want to say that it is Porrick's own blanket, and I want to listen to the sound design and see if I can hear a bell after he throws the fingers at the door. I don't think there is one, but on another watch through, I'd like to see if that does happen, as just for rewarding foreshadowing of all that stuff, because you do become so attached to that sweet little bell. And when the horse is in his house, as he's writing the sign, when the donkey, there you is inside of the house. No, well, after Jenny has died, and the
all the
mayor
animals get
and
let in
all
the
the
house.
animals are inside the house,
Because
and the
you
mayor
can't expect him
knocks
to keep the
over.
animals outside the house.
Sounds like
he's happy.
It sounds like you thought it was an emotional moment when Jenny died.
It was, yeah, dude.
Okay.
We've been over this.
I really do. And it wasn't cheesy at all to me either.
No.
I found it very sobering, and he's just kind of sitting there petting, and then he moves her inside and just keeps petting her, and the light is changed, and then he takes her back out, buries her, and just kind of stands there, and he kisses his hands, touches the cross, puts the sign on it, and then what does he do? He goes and he talks to Colum, and he says, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm going, and so this is a man who didn't do this in immediate anger either, and that is, he did this in resolved anger.
That's like the punchline, though.
It's just another thing that he loved and he lost. He loved Colm and he lost the friendship with him. He loved his sister, and he lost her presence. And he loved Jenny, and she died.
And Jenny loved him too. And like all the nuzzling, and she walks in, she nuzzles him and is like pets him, and he's seen feeding her, but only kind of feeding the other animals and stuff, and the bell. But when the mayor knocks over the bell on the table as he's making the sign for Jenny's grave, he just pats the mare, puts the horses to the side, and then just with one hand just puts it right back up. And it just speaks volumes of the character, because it's not a character who's now it is a rash action, right? But it's not done with the same exuberance as something that's done rashly could be seen. He takes a day to sleep on it. He takes a few hours to mourn, and then he goes tells Colm, this is what's happening next. And it has come to this, and it is going to our graves. I've lost everything, and I don't know what to do anymore.
Well, it also takes some time to get all the gasoline together,
Not necessarily.
Gasoline, the lanterns, has to, put them all in the cart.
Nope, he had his ration day a little while ago. I've got every response covered, brother. But yeah, it's like, if you intentionally seek harm on someone, it's a lot scarier than if it was just spur of the moment you punch someone back because they pushed you. There's a difference between premeditated murder and not premeditated murder. Manslaughter. But yeah, I find every character moving, and it was that warm hurt, that slow burn that I kind of left the movie theater with. And some of my favorite movies are my favorite movies because they make me feel things that other films never have. The Irishman, Fargo, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and this movie to me really are just some of the greats of my viewing experiences. And
Really
I've
like The
never,
Irish.
the Irishman is, I have never sobbed at a movie. I have cried at plenty. I have never sobbed. And it was the craziest thing ever. But yeah, no.
See, that's so strange to me because I walked out of the movie. It it just felt like such a cold, like making light of things that shouldn't be made light of. It felt like such a cold, dark, empty takeaway from the film. But you had like the complete opposite, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm with Will. I don't really think it was making light of them. I don't think it was making light of the events that happened. It was just presenting the comedy that goes along with the darkness because it's trying to be real life and there's never,
Well, it's not trying to be real life.
well, it is. And there's never pure
It's trying to set up this ridiculous
you
situation of all this stuff keeps happening. It's not
uh
trying to be
but you
realistic.
can
Warren,
It's trying
never
to
didn't
set
you
up.
guys find a dead body in
it's
the
hard
back
to
of a
have
car nearby
it's
your house?
Oh, that's besides the point.
have you ever
Okay.
had a day where the entire day, 100%, every single second was just pure overwhelming joy or was pure overwhelming sadness?
Yeah,
It's not
Yeah.
really hard. It's very, very hard to come past those days. They're few and far between. And it's just presenting life, I think. It's presenting the good with the bad.
that's not really the point, though. The point is, it's like all these ridiculous situations keep being thrust upon these characters so
It's
that they're in.
build up. There's been build up and tension, and then they explode in these situations. I don't think it's being thrust upon them.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's like all these super ridiculous, tragic things keep happening that are like so that the characters are put in these awkward and tragic situations so that it sets up the next, it sets up the comedy of it all because it's so tragic. And it's ridiculously tragic and increasingly more ridiculously tragic. And that's part of the comedy.
I think a man who gets captured by uh terrorists and then has to build a mechanized suit and also build a miniature generator that glows and put it inside of his chest and then go back home to his
How
multi-million dollar.
awful. How do you make light of that?
Dude, that's
Oh, I know.
crazy.
That's not trying to be a comedy, though.
You
Oh
tell me Iron Man isn't a
my
comedy.
gosh.
Oh my.
Yeah, for the record, Warren's the biggest Marvel fan here, and Marvel is littered with comedy, and those movies are never really comedies. They're all action dramas. Just to clarify things for our audience,
Very few Marvel movies try to be comedies first.
it's just tacked on because that's just how life works.
Yeah, exactly.
You take the funny with the unfunny.
But this movie, the entire plot was designed to be comedic. It's not designed to be a drama. It's designed to be a comedy. None of the drama is because of the narrative. It's because
No,
of the
I think
comedy.
McDonough just knows how to wring comedy out of stories better than every single Marvel director does.
Well, Marvel's besides the point. This specifically,
Okay.
you're telling me that the plot was written for the narrative instead of the comedy?
Yeah.
What?
I think the plot was written so that people can watch this movie and say, I think we need more niceness in the world. I think they can laugh and they can cry and they can finish the movie and they can leave a changed person.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great takeaway, but I find it very hard to believe that that's what was intended from
I think that's absolutely the
this film.
intention, and I don't think it will affect every person. I don't think it's gonna, I don't think it's gonna affect every person the same way to the same extent at all, even. I think we've proved that today, and that's okay. I think that's okay.
Okay, well, we might just have to agree to disagree on that, but
I think we
I
might.
don't think any of the decisions at any point in the process were ever made to enhance the narrative. Almost every decision made was to enhance the comedy, not the narrative. And usually decisions are made to the detractment of the narrative.
I got nothing else, man.
I got one more short thing.
Okay.
What I was saying about the surface versus how they truly feel. I think the scene where right before Colm cuts 4 of his fingers off, I don't remember quite what happens, but Colin Farrell gets angry and he goes to Combs' house, kicks in the door and says, "How are you fatty? Dancing with your dog, are you? Who else gonna dance with you? It's not like your dog has a say." And he comes in and he wants to insult him, he wants to get at him, he's angry. And I, but once they sit down and talk for a little bit, he says, he says, "How's your song coming along?" He says, "I finished it. It's called The Banshees of Inisherin." He says, "Wow, that's really cool." They have a talk about banshees and how, are there any banshees on Inisherin? Maybe there are. Maybe they just don't scream anymore. And then what Colin Farrell's insult was becomes what they bond over. He takes it back and he says, "I dance with my donkey too if I knew how, and if she did." And that's once you crack the surface, I think you can really, really get at the heart of this movie.
I agree. And I love that scene too, really quickly, just because it highlights that Pork is going to try and be this thing, but not
But he's
until
Pork.
later does he decide not to be the nice guy.
Yeah.
But he just can't stoop to that level. And I think it's really beautiful. But it makes it that much sadder when Colin rejects it.
And it's not even a can't, it's he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to because there's still so much friendship there.
Yeah. Beautiful movie.
It is a beautiful movie.
Shall we move into ratings?
I am ready if you
Think-
are.
Will, you want to go first? Carter, you want to end?
I think that's a beautiful sandwich, actually.
Do we want to sandwich it or do we
I
want
think we
to
should sandwich.
Actually,
wanna
Warren, you
do a little
start.
graph?
No, I think we
Yeah,
should
yeah.
sandwich. Okay.
Okay.
All right, rock,
okay,
paper,
let's
scissors,
sandwich
rock,
it.
paper, scissors.
Nah. We'll sandwich. We'll
You
sandwich.
sure? All right,
Yeah.
because Warren's,
I don't want to be too much of
I
a
think this will
negative
be quite a
Nancy
shock to
Wheeler.
Warren if he goes first. I think that'll be awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
No,
Warren,
I don't think
Warren,
anyone's going
Warren,
to be shocked.
No.
Okay,
Warren,
fine.
no,
All right,
Warren,
we'll go
Warren,
for it. We'll give. All right,
Actually,
fine.
no. Warren, go first. I'm down. I just let it all out. Warren.
Okay,
No, well,
rock,
okay,
paper,
Will,
scissors.
I think you should go first just so we don't, I don't want to be too much of a negative Nancy Wheeler that way. Start
Sorry,
positive,
folks.
in positive.
Our
This-
hosts are having a bit of a row about the rating
All right.
here.
Oh, I didn't think we were rowing. Are we rowing?
It sure does sound like we're rowing, doesn't it?
It does.
What's he doing? Nothing.
He's sitting there.
Smoking.
Was he sleeping?
No.
He's
He was smoking. How can he be sleeping?
This film, gosh, I don't know where to put it in terms of the year because it has been a great year for films. It fits a different niche than Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I love it as much as that film, and it is of my now 4 probably favorite movies of all time, with again The Irishman, Fargo, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and The Banshees of Inisherin. This movie to me is perfect in almost every way, and I am very, very happy to give it a 10 out of 10. Perfect film for me.
Not surprising,
Yep.
but expected.
Warren, how about you, bud?
Well, based on what you guys were saying, I would have thought you guys saw a different movie, but it sounds like you guys found that it was more than a comedy.
Oh,
Which I
and
did
my
not.
mom. Don't forget also my mom.
Yes, of course. And B, you guys found the characters believable, compelling, and funny. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
75% of the people who
All right,
saw it
well, I would-
agreed. Yes.
Disagree with both of those entirely. I would describe it as good cast, beautiful location, a quaint premise, but terrible writing and terrible execution. It's 100% a comedy that's not funny, and all of the comedic fulcrums just fell flat on their face for me. I'll put it this way: I've seen a lot of bad movies this year on the Road 100.
No, no, it's not.
No, I'm not.
It's not the worst. It can't be the worst.
I'm not saying, I'm not going quite that far, but if I had seen this movie by myself, I would have just left the theater halfway through. Well, maybe not even halfway. At some point in the first 45 minutes, I would have just given up and walked out.
You wouldn't even have seen half the stuff you argued about then.
Exactly.
Just saying.
And I would have, I gladly would have missed that. So yeah, When it's a comedy that's not funny, there's not much left. 2 out of 10.
Oh no! A 2?
There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Warren, a 2?
There's nothing
How is
really
this
to
better
praise
than
about
Thor:
the
Love
movie.
and Thunder? I'm so mad right now.
So it is the worst of the year for you,
No,
or it's like bottom 3.
it's not quite the worst.
It's bottom 3.
Did you like this
that
You've
less
remains to be
than the
seen.
Wait, okay, you've seen 4
355?
2-2s, right?
I don't
I mean, you've
remember.
seen 4 2-10s, right?
I haven't ranked this on the list yet. That's just the
Wait,
rating.
wait, 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 wait. Is this worse than the 355 for you?
He gave
yeah.
355 a 4.
There's just nothing. There's basically nothing good I can say about this movie. No facet of it was
Warren,
praiseworthy.
the cinematography, the acting.
Nope.
You're joking. This
it
has
made me
to be some
it made me
alternate
so mad when I
reality.
saw somebody who was saying they thought Colin Farrell deserves an Oscar
He
nomination for.
does.
Oh my goodness!
He does.
Way to make my blood boil.
He does.
Okay, this is bottom 5 for Warren of the year.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea it was this bad. I am surprised. I am very surprised.
All right, Carter,
Bring it on home,
complete
bud.
the sandwich.
All right. I think we need
I'm
more.
gutted.
I think we need more movies like this. I think too many movies are just shallow and dumb, and too many movies are just dreary and dark, and both are full of hate in their in their special, unique
But
ways, I think.
this was both.
No, I think this movie is just excels at exploring human relationships and the ups and downs of how we think and how we feel and what we value and how those things change over time and how we relate to each other and how we should relate to each other. Um, every character in this, every performance in this is just perfect. It's just so touching. We didn't even go over when we went over character motivations, we just had to defend them from Warren, but they're all just so moving to me. Everyone. I They all deserve Oscars, in my opinion. And I think this is a grand slam of a film that even people who even non-Martin McDonagh fans, even non-Coen Brothers fans might find some enjoyment in this because it's McDonagh's most reflective, his most thoughtful, and his most mature. I've seen it twice as of now. It is my favorite film of 2022 so far, and I am happy to give it a 10 out of 10.
Let's go.
Also not surprising.
My mom probably would also give it a 10 out of 10, by the way. So, yeah. I'm just saying that's 3 10s spanning vastly different ages.
That's an average of 8, so we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Yep.
Warren, I am so sorry.
Any closing thoughts?
I think we've exhausted our closing thoughts and our ratings. If there's nothing else you guys have to say.
Oh, no, next week, well, probably pretty soon, we're going to be discussing Black Panther 2 or Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Next podcast, we'll be talking about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and in the hole is Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and after that, we got a big one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to the next few weeks. I hope you guys are. I hope you guys out there in the audience are.
Dude, and then December just keeps chugging with good movies, man.
They really are. Yep.
Good news is we can't get worse than this, so it's only uphill from here.
Well, I think we can.
It's a weird. You want to say it's all downhill from here, because that's what the expression is, but it doesn't really make sense when you're going up in quality. So I'm just gonna go with it's all uphill from here.
You would say it can't be worse than this.
It's all
Coen.
smooth sailing from here.
Well, okay, I guess I should be careful how I say that because technically it could get worse.
Yeah, uphill kind of means it can get worse, though. I mean, I don't know.
But
Because
yeah,
they say
no,
uphill
Not
battle.
the greatest metaphor.
no.
Yeah, hills. Yeah, stay away from hills when you're making metaphors. And
And fingers and shears
yeah,
and donkeys
agreed.
and Ireland, I guess. Don't go to
Maybe.
Ireland. You'll be happy. Anyway, Carter, you want to send us out?
I would love to. Thanks for listening, guys. As always, we are the Monkeys, and talking about movies is our business. Catch you next time.